Okay. Vivi, are you there? Hello. I wonder if it's working properly. Can you see if in the chat if people can listen to us? Yeah? Okay. So I guess you're supposed to start now. Okay, very low volume. Uh, whose low volume? Really? You sound good here. I don't know. Hold up, guys. hmm is it still quiet for Vivi? Can you say something, Vivi? How come? Ah, okay. I wanted to. So check now. That's odd because you were sounding pretty nice before. Well, um, since this is a technical issue, just give us a moment so we can figure it out.
What is your Discord output? Check what's on Discord. I can hear myself. Okay, awesome. We're back. You should go now. Awesome. I'm so sorry. um, I think I might be loud now,
It's fine.
but it's working. Hi everyone, we're really sorry.
Just make sure. Can you guys hear Miss Vivi?
They can hear me, but can't they? Oh, I'm definitely louder than you now, so you might want to lower me. Okay, more.
Okay.
Is this any better? Should we lower it more? Okay,
Should
look,
we?
now it's your time to yell into the mic. Okay, it's actually perfect now. Awesome, so we can start everything.
Okay, we have no
Uh,
idea why this happened because it was working perfectly. Anyway, so that was a good start. Um,
it was amazing.
Hi everyone. Welcome to today's
Hi,
streams of Youtaite Resources. I'm Howl.
I'm Vivi. I'm not sure we have to introduce ourselves anymore.
Uh, you with it's just standard procedures.
Okay, sure.
So for this stream, Vivi and we were having a conversation about how could we tackle like talking about After Effects, and
Hmm.
we both agreed that the best way to do that would be to start with a really introduction to the basics of the program, so we can
Right.
use this video and the things that we'll talk about today to build up the next streams. So it'll be very
This is
basic stuff.
basically right.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that everything you see here is very subjective. So we're here not to
Hmm.
tell you how to animate, what to do, or what your preferences should be. It's just us sharing our knowledge because we really want everyone to try to animate. Because in the long run, it's a lot of fun, and we've learned a lot through the process of even preparing the stream. So we hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
first things first. I
Uh
think it would
huh.
be good to talk about versions of After Effects. My version is CC 2018. Vivi's version
Awesome.
is CC 2019.
Right.
So,
So
hmm?
I feel like it's really important to keep in mind that if you're working on the CC platform, you can interchange the project files. So if I were to send Hal my project file, I can downgrade it so he can open it up. But say if I were on CS6, then it would be problematic. He can open my file, but I cannot open his.
Hmm. Yeah. So keep in mind that the version that you pretend to use is always good to keep updated with the versions. But I
Hmm.
happen to be lazy, so I'm still using 2018.
It's okay. As long as we can interchange files and it works for us, I feel like that's all that matters.
Yeah. So when you start or pretend to start a project in After Effects, um,
Pretend.
pretend, yeah, that's what I do all the time. I just pretend. Um,
That is very valid.
yeah, it's very no-brainer, but you gotta import the files. So
Hmm.
you could just go into File and Import and choose a file, multiple files, and just do the manual uh, uh, technique of doing that.
Right, manual selection.
Yeah, or you could just double-click in this area right here, and pick a file or a folder. You can see here the import folder, import uh, a file.
Selection. Mhm.
Yeah. So after you import, what do you want to? Let's say import a music, and you want to create a composition to start the actual animating. You can go through new composition, and it will prompt this page. And that's a lot of things to talk about here. And there's a lot of controversial stuff as well.
Let's start.
For default, like that's the one that I believe that everyone uses, the HDT HDTV
No,
720.
don't talk for everyone. I use 1080p.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Oh well, all right. Well,
The first controversial topic.
that's what I use. For me, it's like very default. And
Right.
there's a lot of talk about frame rate in compositions. Maybe you can
Mhm.
talk about a little bit the
Right. So
implications.
how what is your normal frame rate? Like, what do you prefer to work on?
29.97.
Okay, so when it comes to frame rate, it's important to keep in mind that you can animate either at 30, 25, you can either choose to go down to 10 frames per second. What that does is when you preview or you choose to load the preview, it focuses only on rendering 10 frames. So if you have a very, very heavy project and it's taking ages to load, you can just go down to 10, which is not going to affect anything for the most part. So it works for very quick renders as well.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of you might have noticed that lately there's been animations that have been rendered in 60 FPS, which are very, very smooth.
Hmm.
I personally believe that it's awesome that we can do that nowadays, but what I've learned through conversations with other animators is that some of them choose to animate at 60 FPS. Now, keep in mind that you don't need to animate at 60 in order to render at 60
Yeah,
FPS.
exactly.
So, our suggestion is that if you choose to experiment with the frame rate, then you might as well go down to even 10 frames per second. Or if you have a very massive project file and there's maybe like a slower part of the section of the song and you wish to like make it more aesthetically pleasing. We've had entries like that that chose to render at like lower frame rates. It looked amazing and gorgeous and it clearly stood out. So don't be afraid to experiment, see what works for you, but the general setup, the normal frame rate that our eye perceives for the most part is 30 frames per second. So that's what we always focus on for the most part. Right.
Yeah, the same way with the frame rate and also the ratio. Like you could animate a smaller ratio and render at a bigger one,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
So
yeah.
as an example, this is a bit of an advanced thing, but what YouTube does, and you guys might have noticed it when you render your videos, it's really hard to find the right codec for rendering because no matter how good it might be, YouTube does compress it. Personally, what I've figured, and this is not for a coarse value render, you can animate like Howl at 720p, and then for the final render, you upscale it. You find the resolution that you wish to choose. For me, it was 4K, and I made the render at 4K, which essentially upped the quality. And when YouTube was compressing it, the quality that we normally choose to watch at, which is usually, 720 or 1080p, it looked much crispier had you just rendered at that resolution. But mark my words, do not do that for a course battle. You're
Yeah.
gonna hate yourself
We do
because
not
the render
recommend it.
time. No, no. For casual courses, please, by all means, up your resolution, up your frame rate. But if you're doing this for a course battle, please play it safe and save yourself from all the stress that comes from rendering.
Yeah. Well, that said, we create the composition. Great. There
Hmm.
are
What's next?
three ways to create a composition, actually. You can click here when there's nothing in the project, new composition, and you check
Hmm.
the time of the song they're using. You can go for
Hmm.
in the composition, new composition, and you prompt the same thing.
Right.
But honestly, the best way to do that is just to drag the music file into this symbol
Hmm.
right here, because it will
Hmm.
create a new composition with the same ratio that you created the previous composition, if you did, and it will keep the length of the song as the length
Right.
of the composition itself. So
That's
you
really
don't have to
convenient.
go typing exactly how
Right.
long the song is in the composition.
Right. Just like
Yeah.
as essentially a bit of a note, you can do the same thing for artwork. So for me personally, when I animate, I really like to pre-compose my art because sometimes I use base colors or I use a placeholder for the artwork. So instead of having to change everything, I replace it later. So,
Hmm.
for instance, if you have an art file, instead of making a composition and then scaling down everything, it's automatically going to create a composition according to the resolution of the artwork, which
Yeah.
again is super convenient. And you don't play around with the scaling and accidentally make someone a lot smaller or a lot taller.
Yeah. Well, about the composition, let's say that you create a composition and you have been working in it, and but you want
Hmm.
to change like how long it is. You want to just change the settings of it. So you would click with the right button, right click the mouse, go to composition settings, and here it will prompt again. but it'll be the settings of the composition that you are working right now.
Right.
So
So at
you
any
can
point
do
in
any
time, you can
adjustments.
still, yeah, you can change it whenever really, which is super
Yeah.
convenient because when I started animating, I remember myself,
Mm.
I actually didn't know this. So I would just go ahead and I would remove the composition if it didn't like work for me. And I
Uh,
had no idea that I could just like change it whenever. So sometimes I would even lose my projects because I would just not realize that, hey, Vivi, that's actually wiping everything you had inside the composition.
wait, so instead of just changing the settings, you would delete everything?
Yes, I wasn't very smart back in the day.
Well, we make choices, don't we?
Oh, shush
Well,
you.
that's the very beginning. You create the composition now.
Hmm.
And it would be good to learn about the shortcuts of the program. And here's the thing, shortcuts are very useful. Everyone should use them. I don't because I'm what? Not smart. I just got used to work in a way that I do everything manually, but I know the value of shortcuts, and Vivi
Hmm.
uses a lot. So she will
Maybe I can
go
teach you some.
ahead.
I'm gonna
She will go
experiment on
ahead.
you. Okay. So personally for me, looking back on the day that I started, many of you might remember yourself as well when you don't really know what to press and what to do. So I kind of compiled some of the most commonly used shortcuts that I use,
Hmm.
and perhaps some of you might even be familiar with. So
By the
when it
way,
comes to,
in this list, I just
yes,
was one of them.
yes.
So,
God, it's okay. So you're gonna act like my pupil. Okay, so
oh, good.
how do you normally view your transform properties?
Oh, I would go to the layer. I will go to
Uh-huh.
this arrow here,
Right?
transform, and I access it.
God, that is so long and there's so much on the screen. Wouldn't
Uh,
it be better if you just had the position on the screen though?
Oh my God, how can I do that?
Oh, just press the letter P.
P.
Come on. Good
Oh,
job. Now press letter T.
T. Hmm.
So when I first started, I had no idea why opacity was under the letter T. Apparently, it's because it's transparency,
Oh,
but we're just gonna ignore that. It's
all
odd,
right.
but we can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
So okay, but if you're say you're working on multiple, properties and you want to access them instantly, instead
Hmm.
of opening everything up again, what you can do is you can hold down Shift and add whatever property you wish to see. So, for example,
Oh.
Shift plus P is going to open up position. Now, if
Hmm.
you press S with Shift, it's going to open up scale.
Oh.
So all of it is composed and is compressed.
So
And
you're
so,
selecting what do you want to see? Uh,
exactly. And if you want to close it down, just press, like, hold down Shift and the letter again, and it's going to change everything just like that. Yeah.
hmm. All right.
Why wouldn't you that? Why do you choose the hard way?
Because we make choices in life, and I made a choice to make my life harder.
I feel very sorry for you. Now, okay, please tell me that you know how to duplicate layers.
I do. That's the one that I use.
That is the one that you use. Okay,
Yes.
so how do you duplicate a layer?
Uh, like in
Copy and
the old
paste?
way, yeah, like copy and paste.
Okay, what is, well, for quicker access, you can just press Control D and it's going to duplicate the layer for you.
Oh, that's cool.
Just like that. Instead of copy pasting, it just does it very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is something that I learned of like way too late.
Mm,
So, moving layers. You have a project file that is literally 4 to 5 minutes long, and you have 100 layers. And in
right.
order to move them around, how would you normally do it? How would you move your layers?
Just a drag. Just select the layer and just drag around.
Okay, but isn't it inconvenient having to match the frame? Like you can
Actually,
see
it
the
is
cursor.
because when I do it like that, I have to get real close, zooming in
Hmm.
to make it like pixel perfect.
Right, right. What
Yeah.
if I tell you that you can press on a square bracket and it's going to position the layer there?
Mm,
The left bracket. Just
yeah.
like that, you don't need to zoom in. You don't need to look at anything. It's
Mm.
done. Why don't you do that?
Um, this is a dragging live stream. I thought we were talking about After Effects.
We are dragging layers, so might as well drag you as well.
Right.
Now, if you combine the brackets with the Alt key, it's going to trim the layer. So right now
Mm,
you cannot see the ending, the right end of the layer. So in order to make it easier for you, just press down Alt
mm,
and the right bracket.
mm.
hmm Now
Right.
you can also
The way that
press
I
it
do it,
on both sides. Mhm.
the way that I do it is, I just do Control Shift D. There's another one that I use.
Okay, but that's trimming. See, you trimmed it, but at the same time, you left
Mm.
a part of it there. Like, why
Yeah, and then I
do
delete
you
it.
want to clean up the mess? But that's cleaning up the mess that you yourself create. Why are you doing that when you can just press two buttons instead of four?
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Right.
Good job. Now, if you were to move from the beginning to end, you would obviously just scroll. But there's two keys that you can use, which are home and end. Right. But you
Mm-hmm.
see how like it drags around. If you were to
Mm-hmm.
press home and end, it would get there automatically. So would you please try that? Right. See, you pressed
And
end and it went to the
home.
right side. Home and end. So these
Mm-hmm.
are very useful for when you're kind of checking over your project file and you want to get to the end quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so okay, we've talked about the way you view your properties.
Mm.
Now, how would you reveal all of them instantly? Would you do the same thing that you did earlier?
Yeah, exactly. Just click here, and everything show up.
Right, but what if you need to do that for 10 layers? That's
I
going to be time consuming.
Oh, it's exactly what I do. I just do that. Oh, 10 layers, right?
Right,
Just what?
right.
Just here, and just go check it
But
one
you
by
see,
one.
right, you're going to close it down for everything. So go back to
Yeah.
the very beginning. I'm going to teach you one very smart trick, which is the letter U.
Mm.
Right. So if you press down the letter U once, come on. No, 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 no. Use the shortcut. The letter U.
You,
U.
you.
Did you delete? Did you delete the wrong layer just now?
No, it's fine. Oh,
It's fine.
here.
So, right, good job. So if you press the letter U, instead of
Hmm.
opening everything and having to look through every single property, it opens up only those that have keyframes on them, which is
Mm.
extremely convenient.
Just
Now,
for reference, let me check. Okay,
right, so
so.
this is what happens. Right, but you only have two positions keyframes, so it's
Hmm.
way more convenient when you're working on a lot of layers. Now,
Oh.
one thing that we're going to go over in the future is an expression. So if you combine U and you press it two times, it's going to open up not only your keyframes, but also all of your expressions. So everything you've keyframed, everything you've added, just press U two times and it's going to open up. This is also very convenient if you have a project file and you do not label your layers, you don't name
Hmm.
them,
Yeah.
and you do not want to like look through all of them to see what effect you have on it. So what you can do is randomly selecting like an empty space. If you press letter U, it's going to open up all of your layers for you. If you
Mm.
double click U, so you can try to do that.
Like that?
No, no, like if you deselect this layer and just
Yeah.
press randomly, so none of the layers are selected. If you press letter U two
Oh.
times, right, it opens it up instantly. So anything that has ever been touched, it opens it up for you. And if you press U again, it closes it. So this is very, very good for maintaining your compositions and knowing what you're working with.
Oh, that's really useful. I'm
Now,
gonna use that actually. That's good.
see, oh, I'm so glad to know that. Now, so we talked about compositions essentially.
Hmm.
So one trick to pre-composing things, which is
Yeah.
basically selecting a layer and making a composition out of it, is like how would you normally do it? How?
To create a pre-comp.
Yes.
Well, in this file here, I would just right click and then mouse,
Uh-huh.
pre-comp,
Right.
and then
Pre-comp.
create a pre-composition, and it creates.
Do you do you ever use your keyboard is my question.
I use it to talk, to type with people on Twitter.
Right. So we're gonna have to experiment a little and get you used to using your keyboard for shortcuts. So one of the quicker ways is to just select your layer and press Control Shift and C.
Hmm.
And voila, it does the same thing, but 5 seconds faster. If you're
Right.
working a lot and I guess you're rushing for something or it just gets like turned into a habit, it's super convenient to have these under your hand. Right. So
Mm.
thank you for illustrating that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Now, so you've got the shape layer selected. Now, this is one of my favorite shortcuts that I didn't know for ages.
Mm.
How would you normally scale something to fit the composition? So you
I
import
would
this.
either like drag and just
Uh-huh.
change.
Right. So you have to like eyeball it. Like it's really hard to match it, right? So
Yeah.
for me personally, when I discover this, so give it a try. Control Alt F.
Control Alt F. Ooh.
Boom. All it did was take you 2 seconds for the program to essentially fit whatever image you have selected to the composition size.
And for this shortcut in special, where can I
Mhm.
use it exactly?
So for me personally, if I'm working with textures, if I'm
Mm.
working with overlays that I download from YouTube and they were 720p, instead of going into scaling or trying to like eyeball it, it's
Mm.
very convenient to like press one button and then it matches. Because if
Oh,
you're using overlays and you use overlays a lot like particles or like light leaks or anything, you do want to save on having to scale stuff.
yeah.
Um,
I can see that.
Now,
Yeah.
one thing Right. Now, since we're already on the shape layer, how do you normally position the anchor point? Because if you were to rotate that right now, it wouldn't be centered.
Yeah. I press the Y uh,
Mm-hmm.
key on the keyboard. I
Mm-hmm.
hold Control, and it finds
Mm-hmm.
the anchor point in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's another way to do that,
Mm.
which is more convenient if you don't want to press around. So if you have selected like 10 shape layers and all of their anchor points all over the place, what you can do is you can press Control Alt Home, and it's going to automatically, right? Yeah, let's give it a try. So
Uh-huh.
we have okay, three shape layers.
Yeah. All of them with the wrong.
Uh-huh. Right. So
So,
if you select them, so if you press Control Alt Home, it's going to automatically center the anchor point. So if you're doing motion graphics, if you're using, I don't know, several layers that you need to have the anchor point positioned properly for,
hmm.
then this shortcut for me personally is such a life changer because I always used to do it manually.
Oh,
Whereas
me
here,
too.
if you have like 20 layers, like you're done. So yeah, but see, you
I
would
will
still have to
forever
do
do
it
it manually.
manually.
I'm stubborn.
Yeah, you would still do it manually. But I do suggest you give some of these
Yeah.
shortcuts a try.
Yeah. I suggested that
Right.
as well.
Right. Now, so some of these you're clearly familiar with. So split your
Yeah.
layers.
Yeah.
You know that one. It's your
Yeah.
favorite one.
Yeah. It's my
Right.
favorite. I love it.
I don't know why you do that. It's really cute, but I don't know why you do that.
Right.
Right. Right. So, okay. So toggle layers. This is something that I use when okay. Thank you for illustrating that. I use it when my project file has like a lot of layers and I need to find the
Yeah.
one that is actually named. So
Mm.
normally you would just scroll and perhaps it does get dizzying. So what you can do instead is pressing control and up and down. So select the top layer and just control and down. Right. So instead of having to scroll, it already highlights the layer. So it's very easy to not only duplicate it, but also look into what its properties are. So for me, I usually use 5 to 6 adjustment layers. And it's really easy to check what's inside and instantly close it.
Hmm.
Now, if you change that to using control and moving to right and left, you're going to skipping one frame essentially, which is super convenient for when you want to shake your animation or you need to time something.
This is
Not a
this
lot of people know these.
mind blown
Mhm.
actually, because I would go
Right,
like super close to
right.
check if I'm right.
Yeah, I still sometimes do that, and then I remember that there's this shortcut, and it's so fast because you can like very quickly check over your stuff. This also
Hmm.
works perfectly for when you are doing a 60 FPS render and you had a
Hmm.
very insane part, and you just know that the timing might be off. This
Yeah.
is how you can check it very quickly instead of having to like preload everything for yourself.
Hmm.
Um, So moving between keyframes, do you ever do that, or
Uh,
like
I just go manually.
we know that,
Just the keyframe is here, right? And then I want to change
right?
it, so I just
Yeah, you would
move
like
it around.
again, right? You would have to like zoom in. But
Hmm.
what if you press the letter J again? Now press letter K. It automatically times your cursor to the keyframe. So no more overlapping keyframes. Because if you're animating the camera and you do not position it exactly on the keyframe, it's going to make a duplicate. And because of
Hmm.
that, suddenly the camera can be jarring and you don't figure that out until you like zoom in and you see
Hmm.
that one keyframe that's like literally one frame off. So for me, this is life changing and it's so quickly to change just about anything. The same, it's the next shortcut. It's the first and the last keyframe.
Hmm.
This works perfectly when you have several adjustment layers open. And instead of like clicking through like, I don't know, like 10 to 20 keyframes, it's going to go to the beginning and the end very quickly. So for me, like these shortcuts, again, if you're used to doing things manually, by all means, stick to doing that. But I do hope that some of you consider trying these out at your own time and perhaps picking them up because
Hmm.
especially the anchor point. Once you start working with shape layers, you're going to figure out that it's life changing. Um, now, have you ever heard of dragging to retime
Yeah,
the
that's
keyframe?
what you'll be doing to me this entire stream.
I know, but
Uh,
I'm going to teach you one more, just one more shortcut that you do not
sure.
know.
Okay.
Right, so please select these three keyframes for me.
Right. Selected.
Right. So, say you mistimed this by a little bit. Like the timing is perfect in the sense of how fast it moves, but you
Hmm.
need it repositioned slightly. So, instead of manually repositioning and spacing them out, if you hold down Alt and start dragging the right keyframe, it's going to keep the space between them as proportionate as possible because normally you would have to like move them around manually, but if you have like 8 or 7 or however many keyframes and you want them separated or like spaced out on like an equal amount of like frames, this is what you would do to speed up your workflow. And the same thing, this is something we're going to go over in the future. It's got to do with the speed graph. How would you normally access it?
With this one right here, this icon right
Right,
here, the graph
right. You
editor.
know me, I love my keys. What you can do is just press Shift plus F3 and it's instantly going to access it for you. But if you press it again, it should close it. Right. So these for me are one of the best shortcuts to focus on to kind of speed up your workflow, especially with
Hmm.
like keyframes. Um, right. I feel like there's a lot more. There's definitely a lot more that I'm
Yeah.
not mentioning because they're more complicated and more complex. But
Hmm.
this is just our 50 cents that we really hope you guys are going to enjoy.
Yeah.
So, mhm,
That's it about for the shortcuts, right?
yes.
Well, we talk briefly about plugins and why we could talk about plugins because there's so much to talk about.
Hmm.
Like there are third-party plugins, there are the built-in plugins of the After Effects, which,
Hmm.
by the way, when you get the After Effects, the program, the built-in effects and plugins are enough for you to make a good video,
For sure.
for sure. So we encourage everyone that is starting out to have to experience all of the effects
Mhm.
that the program gives you. It's a very trial and error um, situation.
I just wanted to comment. You're talking about like internal plugins, and all I'm seeing on the side is like external plugins.
No, shh, shh. Oh,
Nope,
I have a
I still
lot.
see them.
It's fine.
Okay, so as a suggestion, back
Hmm.
when we first started out, like both me and Hal from experience,
Yeah,
it was really hard to think of transitions. Like right now, nowadays, there's a lot of templates, there's a lot of presets. A lot of you are familiar with one of them, which is called Motion Pro. I personally advise you to look into animating things on your own first before turning to those templates. It's for
yeah,
me personally, I feel like it's really important to know how something works in order to make it better.
yeah.
By all means, use templates and presets, But as long as you add something of your own or you learn something from it, you're going to be an amazing animator. But if you only take advantage of it just for the sake of speeding up your workflow, then I feel like you're doing something wrong. So right now we're talking about some of the transitions, and if we talk about some of the essential plugins, we can definitely talk about the ones that are already in After Effects. So Hal, do you remember using the Venetian blinds essentially all the
Yeah.
time we used shape
It
layers?
has been a while since I last used it, but
Hmm.
you know,
It's amazing. You can do
yeah,
so much with it.
it's one of the classic like effects for
It's nostalgic, isn't it?
yeah.
Right. Um, so when it comes to transitions, it's really hard to say how to do them right because there are a lot of plugins. If we talk about the essential ones that are integrated into After Effects, there's
Hmm.
literally a list that Hal has open right now. If you're just starting out and you haven't seen this before, if you haven't experimented with them, by all means, go ahead and do that. Use
Yeah.
one, two, three different transition effects and see what they do to you
Oh,
because you're going to be mind blown.
my favorite one
Hmm.
of this list is the grid one
Okay, yeah.
because I actually use it to make textures.
Hmm.
Let me see.
Come on.
Doesn't this
That
look
looks
really nice?
amazing.
Yeah.
It's very quick. I remember using this to transition artwork. So I would
Oh,
like
we all did.
keyframe it from 100 to 0. We all did. I feel like we all went through a phase of using the grid wipe as our like main transition.
Yeah. There are a lot of plugins that are free. They are available for free.
Hmm.
I think the most popular one is VC Reflect. Everyone has VC Reflect.
You have it right.
Yep. That'd be very embarrassing if I didn't.
Uh-huh. Right. So when it comes to reflections, personally, I used to never do them just because it was so time consuming, like having to duplicate your artwork, having to flip it, having to position it. This plugin is free. It's provided by Video Copilot along with a lot of different tutorials and plugins. And if you're working with full bodies and actual like 3D environments, then you're definitely going to value this because it's got a lot of options and you can customize it however you want.
Yeah.
So we
Did we
went over
figure
the
out
receipt
if
effect.
Bloom was a available for free as well? Because I
Yes,
have
Bloom is also right.
hmm,
So do you want to go over the Bloom?
Bloom is probably the most used transition
Overused
by
in some cases.
everyone.
Everyone who's used to animating CBs knows of
Yeah,
Bloom,
it's the famous shiny transition.
the glowy one, right?
Yeah.
Um, So the reason why earlier I mentioned templates and presets is because if you look on the side, you're going to see that it's FX blur, FX wide, brightness, and blur. So essentially, Bloom is a preset that was created by the use of internal After Effects plugins. So you can actually try to replicate it. And once you learn how
Hmm.
to do that, you're going to have way more control over your transitions.
Yeah,
Um, as like 50 cents uh, when you render on 60 FPS, After Effects hates bloom. It's actually
really.
going to slow down your render, right? Yeah, I've rendered some slower animations that only use bloom as a transition, and whenever it was rendering the bloom parts, it would slow down by maybe like 500%. So if you're doing a slower song and you're mainly using bloom as your transition, you might want to reconsider if you don't have a lot of time to render.
Yeah. Also, talking about render-friendly effects, it's good to talk about blur itself.
Oh my god, I love
There,
this topic. I
there's
love
okay.
blur.
Go off. Go off.
Okay, so both Hal and me, we set up our animations, and sometimes we use the depth of field, which is a more of an advanced topic that will be covered in the future. But if you want to quickly achieve the depth of field feeling to the animation, um, we kind of urge you to go through the blurs that you have and check which ones your computer is okay rendering.
Yeah.
We've been approached by people who asked us to help them render, and unfortunately, I've noticed that a lot of people use blurs that are very, very heavy on the processor, um, which is very unfortunate because it's just a blur, but it's a camera lens blur, which tries to replicate the realness of the lens, and that
Yeah.
slows it down. But if you're doing what we do and it's just animation, you might as well stick to using fast blur.
Oh, please.
It's literally in the name. It's just a fast blur.
Yeah.
It's That's all you need.
No need for
Um,
fancy all the other blurs possible.
I used to use motion blur a lot in the past, but I've learned that just because you have it on, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be visible enough. So I started making my blurs manually. So radial wipe or like radial blur, fast blur, everything combined together makes for an
Hmm.
amazing animation. So don't be scared to experiment because when it comes to animation, it's all about what
Yeah,
you think looks
it
good.
is.
And it's very
Like
subjective.
it's like I don't think we have the authority to tell you how to make a video because that's something that you will develop as you grow and as you learn.
Hmm.
But that's
Hmm.
we can talk about optimization and what works
Hmm.
best. It's pretty much
Right.
what it is.
Um, So for me personally, if I need to use or choose blurs, I use the fast blur on the backgrounds or background elements
Same.
because it blurs it very like seamlessly. When it comes to animating the camera and I want to, replicate the motion blur, I use the CC radial blur
Hmm.
and on the zoom feature. A lot of what we're saying right now, we are going to go in depth about in the
Yeah.
future stream.
Hmm.
Given the fact that animation is very difficult to dive into, we chose to sort of focus on the simpler stuff. So,
Yeah.
what are some of your favorite effects other than the ones that we've sort of covered right now?
We'll be opening the for questions. Like if you have questions about how to make a specific effect or how to um, positioning or scaling and all of that, we
Hmm.
will get all those questions and we will make a mock-up scene that we will explain in depth how to do it and show you visually how it looks.
Right. So don't be afraid to use the hashtag Youtaite resources on Twitter if you got any questions.
Hmm.
We also urge the community to start helping each other.
Yeah, please.
The reason why Youtaite resources came to life is because we feel like it's time we start becoming more helpful to one another because there's a lot of competitions. And as you've noticed, there's so many course battles right now that there's just a shortness of animators. But trust us, people who've been animating for many, many years, once you see the tools, once you know your shortcuts, it's not that hard to get into it.
Yeah,
So we want to help everyone see what it's like. And perhaps you can even help your staff animators, stay with them, give them help when they need rendering or just about
yeah.
anything.
Hmm. Well, do you guys have any questions? Like, Vivi, can you check if anyone got a something
Oh, I'm
pertinent to
sure there's going
say?
to be questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, for the most part, if you guys have any like specific questions, like you've seen an animation, whether it was done by me, by Hal, or any other animator, feel free to submit your question to the Youtaite Resources
Hmm.
document, and we will be sure to go over it before the next, specifically like targeted towards this stream. We will prepare specific compositions that will answer your questions, and
Yeah,
we will demonstrate how to do certain things and
yeah.
achieve the certain
The
effects.
mock-up scene will be basically what you guys want to know.
All right,
Yeah,
right. I think it is kind of difficult to come up with a question right on the spot because a lot of it, it relies on the visual representation.
Hmm.
So, okay, so we do have a question regarding text effects.
Hmm.
Um, so, how are you a fan of animating lyrics?
Sometimes, if I'm feeling
Sometimes.
like
Well,
it,
does it depend on the song or just your mood and the time that you have left until the deadline?
all of it,
All of it.
all of it.
For me personally, I was never a fan of it until I learned of all the expressions, which I really want to share with everyone because it's such a life changer. Lyrics are really difficult to do. because what we do here is so different from any tutorial that you can find online. And so having to combine literally like 2 and 3D animation with motion graphics, it can be a
Hmm.
bit difficult.
Yeah.
Um, right. We got a mention of Animation Composer. Do you use Animation Composer?
I do, but I don't have it ready right now.
Right. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Animation Composer,
Hmm.
it's essentially an external plugin that provides you with some of the free text animation effects. Um, and it's very, very helpful. I urge everyone to look into it. It's gonna
Hmm.
change your life. It offers you a lot of customization, which I also want you to make sure to look into. Because if you're just going to start using presets and templates um, without like taking something out of it, then it's not really learning.
Yeah.
It's everyone's going to look the same way, and I feel like everyone's animations are so unique, and we should stick to our own unique styles while still incorporating those freely available plugins essentially.
Using templates and presets is not necessarily an issue. It's all about you learning something from it. Like you're
Hmm.
getting a preset and you say, "Oh yeah, this looks pretty cool," but what if I change this and I add that? It's
Hmm.
about
I mean,
making
they're here
something
to help us.
yours.
They're here to help us.
Yeah.
We got a question about Element 3D, and I think that's one of the
Oh,
questions that you're going
that's.
to love to answer. Um, it is a bit of an advanced question
Hmm.
regarding Element 3D, which will come in the future.
Yeah,
We
it's planned.
do have, yeah, it's definitely planned. So please look out for that one. So I feel like for the most part, it's typography, text expressions, Element 3D.
Hmm.
Um, so all of the stuff that we personally also do not like to do.
I don't mind Elementary D. I think it's pretty cool.
Hmm.
It's very. I find it odd to use. It's not very
Hmm.
intuitive, to be honest,
Hmm.
but it's
Mm,
fine.
right. So shadows, lightning, blending layers together. I think that is color correction.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about color correction?
Well, I have a lot of feelings about color correction. I think the plugin that people use the most is from the Magic Bullets suite.
Yeah, yeah.
Lux. Now everyone and their mama use Lux. It's insane.
Do you want to demonstrate what it looks like inside?
Yeah. So
Awesome.
first of all, when it comes to color correction, After Effects already got built-in effects for color correction.
Hmm.
So I want
There's
to,
a lot of them actually.
yeah, like all of that are built in for color correction, and
Well,
it
if you
will
think
take
about
us
it,
like 10 hours to to go through each
right.
one of them.
If you think about it, Magic Bullet looks is literally just combining everything that's provided internally into a more accessible uh like mode. So it's a lot easier to see and preview what you're doing because through these names, personally, I would know what it does. Magic
Hmm.
Bullet looks, it has different templates, it shows you what you're doing,
Yeah.
and it happens in real time, and it's very
Um,
quick on your processor.
Color correction is a subject that deserves its own um, stream, but
Hmm.
I can hover over it. So for
Hmm.
any kind of effects that you want to apply to a composition, you want to create a adjustment layer.
Hmm.
It's a layer that is blank. There's nothing on it, but every effect that you apply to it will apply to all layers under it. So
Right.
that's the layer that you want to use for color correction. Looks is when you use it, it will prompt this window, and there's a lot of things going on here. So you could go to the templates of all the um, filters available, or you can
Hmm.
create your own. What I like to do most of the time is that I try to find a template that I like, and then I adjust to how I want it to look in my project. How about you, Vivi?
For me personally, when I animate, I usually use 2 layers of Magic Bullet looks, I tend to combine different effects for
Mm-hmm.
maximum blending because
Mm-hmm.
some of these, if you look at them, they actually blur out the edges. You can by all means make your own presets, but I do recommend
Yeah.
if you're rushing, if you're lazy, I feel like we're all lazy. Like these tools are here to help us, so we shouldn't be ashamed of using them. So if you find an effect that you really, really like, you can just select it and then start adjusting it to the way that you like. If you feel like your animation doesn't look like it pops enough, like this is a very good one. If you look at it, it gives you curves, coloriza, edge softness. Edge softness is a really, really good plugin, which is essentially blurring the edges, but it gives you so much control over it including colorista. Like, if you wish to edit colors, this is our go-to. Like, we definitely recommend
Yeah.
trying to use Magic Bullet looks. Um, when it
Also,
comes to,
a very
hmm?
simple way to do color correction is to use layer modes as well.
Oh, those are amazing.
Yeah, like
Um,
it's very, it's a no-brainer, really. Like you
you
want
saying that I
to,
didn't
hmm?
like you're saying that for the longest time I did not know how to do this. So you're saying no brainer. I say it takes some people some time to learn these things, me included.
uh, I don't have an art piece right now, but let's just go with it. You want to add
hmm
like a kind of a shadow over the art piece that you're using.
hmm
So it would be a good idea to add a gradient, right? And
hmm
change the mode to overlay or multiply. I think it's multiply, right? Yeah,
It's
multiply.
multiply, but it depends on what you want, right?
Yeah, and then you can add like shadows to backgrounds to art pieces. Like you can change how much of a shadow you want it to be.
Right. There's also different gradient ramps. So some of them internally have the mode combined with them,
Hmm.
which allows you for like more accessibility.
Yeah,
There's just so much to talk about if you like select specific effects. So if you guys have like a specific animation that you really enjoy, and there's like that 1 second that you saw that was super flashy and you don't know how to do it, um, we would
send
like
it
to
to our
help
Twitter.
you. Right. There are things that we don't know either. But I
Yeah.
feel like if we all come together as a community and we start helping each other, especially when it comes to animation, sharing our thoughts, sharing our work process, then all of us are going to improve drastically.
Oh yeah.
When I first reached out to Hal, when he showed me how he animates certain things, I was absolutely shocked that, Hal, could you demonstrate your camera setup?
My all right.
Do you even
S- So
just delete everything here? Clean it up. Clean
yeah,
the
yeah,
mess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll keep this circle. So camera,
Camera.
yes. A null
Yes.
object.
A null object. So personally for me, when I work, I have a camera and a null object. I parent the camera to the null object. So wherever the null object goes, the camera goes. You can animate the camera manually, but unfortunately, it's very, how should I say it? It's a bit hard to control.
Yeah, it's very hard to
But if you
control.
have these two, you not only get to animate the null object, but you also get to animate the camera. Now, one thing that Howl does is he also
It's a
has
domino
a
effect.
third null object.
It's a
He
null
has
object. It
another
just
null
keeps
object.
going. Just keeps
It keeps
going.
going. It keeps going. You can make as many null objects as you want, and you can control your camera with as many as 10 null objects for maximum rotation, maximum movement. Because my issue for the longest part was that I would zoom out the camera using the null object in the speed graph, and then
Yeah.
I would use the camera and I would like keyframe it going out a little, but that would never be enough if I also wanted to zoom in. But knowing that you can make another null object that is parented to the other null object changes the game entirely because that gives you so much control, whether it's rotating, positioning, scaling. It's mind blowing. It's just one null object, and it does so much for you.
Yeah. Like
Like,
we will
just give it a
add
try.
like camera tricks to for the mockup scenes.
hmm
So kind of like two motions happening but with the same camera, you know?
Right. So normally you would be able to do that on one null object and one camera, but it needs a lot of precision, a lot of like speed graph and easing like you're doing right now. But if you add in another null object that at the same time, I don't know, like scales it up, that's changing so much, and my mind was blown. And I feel like after this, I'm going to animate like a brand new person. So,
Oh, by the way, I remember when we were practicing and I try a text layer and I just did that.
right. So, one thing that I didn't know, and it was a game changer for me, when I make my text, I just select the text tool and I click on the screen, just like that, and I type whatever I need. So, taka taka taka, give me like a message, like whatever it is, like just type something. Right. So, right. And then if I needed to center several like verses or whatever, I would have to duplicate it and I would align it basically. Now do
Hmm.
it your way
Oh,
by making a text box.
oh, it's so easy, just that,
You make a text box
and that's it.
and you can center, right, but like press enter so you can have like two lines of text in the
What do you
same
mean?
one, in the same text box. Like in
Oh,
the same box, give me two lines of text.
yeah.
And then skip to the next line. Right. So for me, if you want to essentially change the paragraph to be in the middle, you would have to do it manually here because all the text is in the same text box. It is going to do that automatically for all of it. So can you change like the text from being aligned to the left side to the center
Yeah.
through the paragraph? Right. So you can do that to all of the text instantly without having to manually do it. And that blew my mind because I never knew that you could make a text box. And I've been animating for many years.
We all learn new things, honestly.
It's all these like small details that make your life so much better and so much easier that
Yeah.
we do feel like starting from the basics and going up and sharing what we already know with one another is going to help us improve overall.
Yeah. It's very that.
I feel like
And
for the most part, yeah,
mm,
go ahead.
not really. Go. You can go.
I wanted to suggest that people do look into submitting more questions so we can actually prepare a mock-up episode.
Yeah.
Because we have received certain questions which covered other people's animations, um, but
Yeah.
there's not
Those are
enough
hard to
material to
talk
make an
about
actual stream.
because it's talking about techniques that we do not know ourselves.
Right, so we can only talk about what we know. Like
Yeah.
again, the way Hal animates is slightly different from the way I do, but it works for him, and it doesn't necessarily work for me.
Hmm.
So our best take on sharing our techniques is just showcasing it through examples.
Yeah.
And we can showcase our examples and our takes on animating certain effects and things is if you provide your questions. So please feel free to submit your questions, tweet at us. We're definitely going to be checking it. And if you see a question that someone asked and you know the answer to, and you can help them and you want to help them, then please by all means go ahead. Like we urge you to help one another.
Hmm.
As for the list containing the plugins that we recommend, we are going to take care of it and it's going to be tweeted out, including the shortcut list that you saw on the stream. So you can check back
Hmm.
in. So most of the information you can find it through our Twitter. Submit your questions and definitely tune in the future when we decide to come back with more mock-up scenes for you to look at.
Yep. And that concludes the Dragging House stream.
We really hope you had fun. We certainly did with some of the technical issues, which always
Yeah.
happens, but it's okay because we got to deal with them.
It was Vivi's fault. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining.
Wow. Thank you. We'll be seeing you in the future.
Yeah.